Award-winning natural bodybuilder and international executive chef Ramel Griardi shares his best recipes for building strength. Sports performance trainer and nutrition expert Joe Arco coaches us through the nutritional components of those recipes and shares his knowledge working with professional athletes.
Today on Body Fuel, we're going to be focusing on pre and post game nutrition, which is a little bit different than what you're used to, Chef Ramel, which is a pre and post workout nutrition.
Now, you work with a lot of athletes, don't you, Joe?
I do. I work with a lot of pro and amateur athletes that actually inspired me to come up with a dish like this. Today, it's going to be about my recipe.
Your recipe,
That's
Joe.
right. Today, we're going to do a power stew.
A power stew?
That's right. This is one of my little inventions that I've put together for my athletes to make sure they have the energy necessary to get through an entire event, even though they have to eat hours before. So for example, some of the athletes who have to either perform at 8 o'clock need to eat around 5 o'clock. So I've had to come up with a recipe to make sure that they're full, plus they have the energy they need hours after. Now, one thing that we're gonna do on Body Fuel today is Chef Bodybuilder Ramel is gonna really spice up my stew to make sure that it tastes even better than what I usually do.
And how we're gonna do that is we're gonna use a little bit of spice here. We're gonna use a little bit of dried chili pepper flakes and some chipotle pepper. Now, chipotle pepper is actually a smoked jalapeno. Now, a smoked jalapeno is gonna have that mesquite flavor to it.
Now that's a nice addition that I never add to my stews.
And now we're gonna punch that up with a little bit of a mirepoix.
Now what's a mirepoix?
Now, a mirepoix is actually carrots, onions, and celery.
Now is that like the typical combination?
Well, actually, there's two types of mirepoix. There's a mirepoix, this is a French mirepoix, and there's actually one, a Cajun mirepoix. Now, a Cajun mirepoix is actually onions, celery, and peppers.
So you could actually do two versions of this.
You can. You just want to add a little bit of Cajun seasoning in there.
Okay. Now I've never made a mirepoix before with my stew, so this is a new addition. Now why would I add this to the stew?
It's actually what's known as a flavor builder.
Okay, so another way of kind of adding a little more punch or flavor to the stew is doing this.
Exactly, and we actually use this for a lot of soups, stocks, and sauces.
I knew there's a reason why you were here.
Exactly.
So what's our first step?
Our first step is we're gonna go and start to brown our meats.
Okay.
Now, once you turn that on there.
Okay, so let's get this heated up a little bit.
Perfect. We're gonna add a little bit of oil in there.
Okay. Now what do you want to do before we start browning our meats?
Before we start browning our meats, we're gonna use a little bit of flour in there.
Okay.
We're gonna flour or dredge our meats. We're gonna use a little bit of beef here.
Okay. Now we're adding a little bit of flour before we start browning this. Now for the amount of flour that we're using right here, that will have no effect on performance. Now, if you notice, Ramel's putting in some chicken as well. Now, what we're going to do in this power stew, which is a little bit different than a regular stew, is add two different types of protein sources. Do you want me to start mixing this around?
Yes, please.
Okay, so what we're going to do is actually add steak and chicken. The reason being is that the steak is going to digest a lot more slower than the chicken will. So if you're eating around 5 o'clock and you're going to be playing around 8 o'clock, the chicken will digest a little quicker, supplying you with the amino acids a lot sooner. But later on in the event or your game, you're still going to have some protein from the steak that's being digested as well.
Now, Joe, I want you to only brown the beef and the chicken. So why don't you place that in the pot there, Joe?
Okay, so let's place this in here.
Perfect, Joe.
Now, I'll let you continue chopping while I wash my hands.
Now, Joe, you have two types of potatoes here. You have a white potato and a sweet potato. What do you want done with this?
I want you to start cutting them.
Okay.
Now, the reason why I got two potatoes here is that we're going to have a different blend of carbohydrates. Meaning we have a white potato and a sweet potato that are going to break down at different times. Now that white potato is going to give you the carbohydrate or the fuel that you need at the beginning of the game, and before you start to fatigue near the end of the game, that sweet potato will kick in and give you the energy you need to perform at an optimal level for the whole game. So we're starting to brown here.
Perfect.
Now how much browning do you want?
You just want it to brown off, and actually we use a lot of the flours to thicken up the stew itself.
Okay, we're going to need a few more minutes here while you finish cutting that up. Now, sweet potatoes are also a great power food as well. Not only are they very high in fiber, but they're a great source of vitamin A as well.
Now, Joe, your potatoes are pretty much cut.
Now, what's the next step for our stew, Ramel?
That looks like it's nicely browned off. Now, why don't we take that and place it here?
Hold that for a second, please. Okay.
Great. Now, that's starting to look very nice, Joe.
Nice. Okay, so we're going to rest that aside.
Why don't you grab a little more oil?
Okay, put some in here.
Yes, please.
Okay. Now, what's our next step for our power stew?
Our power stew. Now, we're going to add our mirepoix, which is our flavor builder, remember?
Perfect.
Why don't you add that to your pot there?
Okay.
Perfect.
Now, how long should this kind of stir for?
That should stir just so that way it's a little bit more wilted, a little bit more, what you're doing is you're actually sweating it.
Okay. So we'll keep cooking this.
Add a little chili pepper flakes.
Nice.
Beautiful. We're gonna add a little bay leaves in there.
Okay.
Now,
I'm assuming the bay leaves is just for extra little flavor.
a flavor builder again, Joe.
Okay.
And our chipotle pepper.
Now, I've actually never added chipotle pepper to a stew, but you know what? Just the smell of that alone, I can really tell this is gonna make this a lot better.
We're gonna add a little bit of garlic in there, Joe.
Want to keep stirring this around?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Ginsu over there with the knife.
That's it. So far we added our mirepoix,
Yep.
a little bay leaves there, some chipotle pepper, and some chili pepper flakes.
It's already starting to smell a lot better than my usual stew.
Now we'd like to just place back our meats in there.
Okay, so give this another stir.
Give it a stir.
Oh, that's starting to look fantastic.
Not just that, can you smell it?
It smells, you know what, it smells, like I said, it smells a lot better than my stew. I mean, it doesn't smell bad. It just smells very plain.
Okay, Joe, we're gonna add our tomato plums.
Okay.
This is gonna give you a different texture as well too.
Now, do you want me to break down those tomatoes or just leave them like that?
Let's just break them down a little bit, Joe.
Okay. We're just gonna kind of chop those up a little bit.
And now we're adding our tomato sauce. That's gonna give you two different types of textures in there, and it's gonna make it a little bit more chunky. It's gonna have a lot more flavor too. Now, Joe, always, like I always told you, season your food. Now you have a little bit of pepper here, a little bit of salt, and we're gonna add our potatoes. Your sweet potatoes and your white potatoes, is it?
That's it. So again, we've added two different types of carbohydrate sources here. Nice complex carbs with the white potatoes and the sweet potatoes. Do you remember the reason why?
Something about time release?
That's right. The white potato will give you the energy at the beginning of the game. That sweet potato will give you the energy to finish the game. Now this is starting to look absolutely fantastic. Now how long is this going to take to cook?
It's gonna take roughly 2 hours, Joe.
Okay.
And because you put the flour in there, it's actually gonna start to thicken up.
Now remember, take a look at this.
That looks beautiful.
Now not only does this starting to smell absolutely amazing, but this looks so good. You know, I can't wait to start giving this version to some of my athletes and see how much better they like it.
You know what? I always make a lot of chili or a lot of stew. I make enough for like 3 days. So you want to get a nice large pot like this Cuisinox one we have here and place it inside there. Now you always want to make sure that you have enough for later on during the day.
Now that's a great tip from us. When you're making this, make sure to grab a large pot so you can make a few servings at one time. Now how long is this going to keep?
This should keep roughly about 3 to 4 days, Joe.
Now make sure when you're storing this in the fridge to cool it down before you actually put it in the fridge. That's a great tip you taught me a long time ago.
Don't forget room temperature in that.
The reason being is if you put this in the fridge and it's still warm, it will sour very quickly. So you know what? If you have quite a few games going on during the week, make a huge batch like we are right now. Cool it down, throw it in the fridge, put it into a resealable container, and you know what? You have enough for the week. Now this is going to simmer off for about how long? 2 hours?
Roughly 2 hours, yes.
So what we're going to do is when we come back, we're going to show you a way to combine 3 different sugar sources plus coconut water.
Coconut water.
That's right, coconut water to maximize your recovery in your post-workout shake. So come right back.
We're back with our beautiful power stew.
That's right. Now, if you're an athlete who needs to eat about 2 to 3 hours before an event, this is a perfect stew for you. We've combined 2 different types of protein with our chicken and our beef. Plus, we've added 2 different types of complex carbohydrates with our white potatoes and sweet potatoes to give you energy for the beginning and the end of your sport.
And don't forget, we spiced it up, Joe, with a little bit of chipotle pepper and a little bit of chili pepper flakes.
Thanks to you. I appreciate that. Now, finally, you're done. Either your workout or your game is over. Now, not only is it important to fuel yourself prior to an event, but you know what's even more important?
What's that?
Fueling yourself after an event, especially for recovery purposes. So today we're going to show you a very nice, unique way of a post-workout or post-game shake.
Don't tell me. Power shake?
How'd you guess? Yes, this is the power shake. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to combine 3 different types of simple sugars. Now simple sugars are very important post-workout because your body's already burned through all the sugars in your body. So prior to game or workout, you want to work on the complex carbohydrates, whereas after a workout, you want to get some nice, simple carbohydrates or simple sugars in your body along with some protein.
We're going to use, what, 3 simple types of sugars?
We are, and we're going to be using a banana, some orange juice, and some honey. And roughly speaking, for about a 200-pound male, you're looking at about 100 grams of simple sugars post-workout and about 50 grams of protein.
Now, you said you had a secret weapon? Or?
I do, and you know what? One of the nice liquids that I like to use either during or even after an event is coconut water.
Coconut water?
That's right. Coconut water is a very nice liquid that you can use that's very high in electrolytes. It's actually a little bit better to use than a sports performance drink.
How about just the regular water then?
Now, the regular water won't have the same amount of electrolytes as coconut water will.
Okay, so why don't we start making this up?
Okay, so what we're going to add here is about a cup of coconut water. We have a cup of orange juice and some honey. And if you mind peeling this for me while I add everything else,
no problem.
We're going to add 2 scoops of protein, which is going to give us about 50 grams of protein here. Now, the protein that we're going to use is a whey protein. And a whey protein is a very fast digesting protein, meaning that as soon as it hits the stomach, it gets digested extremely quickly, so you don't have to wait for that protein to get into the body.
Now, Joe, I'm just going to use half of a banana. Is that okay?
That's fine. And now we're going to add a little bit of ice in there as well.
And ice is going to make it really nice. It's going to make it almost like a smoothie.
Now, we're going to blend this up. There we go.
Beautiful,
Now, if you are traveling to your game or your event, and it's going to take a little while for you to get home, what I'd recommend you do is make this ahead of time and put it into a thermos and bring it with you. It's very important to get this drink in within about a half-hour window after your workout or after your sport.
You know what, Joe? I actually make 2 or 3 shakes ahead of time. That way, I already know that it's already there.
Now, that's a great tip. So again, you know what? If you're an athlete or even a weekend warrior who needs to eat a few hours before your event, we got you covered with the Power Stew. Once you're done your event, don't forget about the Power Shake to make sure to refuel your body and give you the protein that you need to recover.